Should I do that?
Go on.
I thought I could do it in a sort of like a sort of welcome to Chats Over Coffee with my yoga teacher. This is the... No, I won't. I don't think I'm going to do that. Anyway.
It was good.
And was it good? Well, hello and welcome to Chats Over Coffee with my yoga teacher. See, I'm going for it. This is a podcast with me, the comedian Peter Brush, talks to his yoga teacher about life and the universe and health and well-being and anything we want. And here she is. Hi, Kayla.
Hi.
So in real time, it's February 2024, but you can be listening whenever you want. But if anyone wants to get involved with anything, are you up to anything this month that you want to mention in case anybody does want to get involved with anything you're doing this month? So what are you up to?
Yeah, I have my regular yoga classes, which you can always join online. So no matter where you are in the world, you can join, and they're always available after the class is live in case you wanted to catch up. But to be honest, I'm actually taking a week off this February.
You say this every month. You say you're taking time off.
I'm having a week off, all right?
I'm just taking it easy this week. You always say that. You say, I'm taking it easy this month. You never go, I'm going flat out and like doing double yoga and more well-being workshops and stuff. It's always...
Yeah. I'm taking it easy this month and I'm having a week off. So, but, still around if you want anything. What about you? What have you got going on in February?
I'm just doing club comedy shows in the UK again, as I do every month. I put live dates up on my website, which is peterbrushcomedy.com, and I'm trying to get more content on the Instagram, so just follow both of us on the socials.
Yeah.
All links are in the show description. So should we let the podcast start?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Enjoy.
Like, I sort of notice it's there, but it's not really, like, painful, really.
Okay.
Just one of those things that probably takes, like, 4 weeks to sort itself out because I'm not getting any younger.
That's really frustrating, that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very annoying, yeah. Whatever. I did get
way too long
ID'd the other day, though.
Oh, that's nice.
It's because I'm small, I think.
You want to say, like, have a good look. See these wrinkles? These are not 18-year-old wrinkles.
The thing is that there'll be a last time it ever happens, and you don't know when that's going to be. So there will be a last time you get ID'd, and you won't know until, like, years later.
Unless you go to America, then you can get ID'd.
What, because they're very hot on it, are they?
They're required by law to see your ID.
Okay, right.
So they only ever don't ask if you're grey, because they have to ask.
I don't remember that because I've been to New York and I don't remember getting asked.
Do you not?
We must have done.
Did you get a big X on your hand when you went in and then they didn't ID you?
No.
Because normally you're allowed in clubs if you're under 21, but you get a big X on your hand that says you're not allowed to have alcohol.
You could buy drugs though, can't you?
Illegal drugs?
Yeah, well, yeah, there's no...
Well... That's because nobody's paying attention.
The dealers aren't going to be like, hang on, that's a bit irresponsible, I think I'm aging slower than other people. I mean, it doesn't mean I'm going to live longer, does it?
Well, I mean, not only from the fact that we don't know how we're gonna pass away, do we? But yeah, in terms of like keeping down medical related diseases, then yeah, obviously they always extend your life, as the studies say and things. If you don't smoke and if you don't blah and you don't blah and you're never stressed.
Do you think though, when you look at people from 50 years ago when they're the same age as we are, they do look older, don't they? They did age quicker. I wondered whether maybe that's a psychological trick because maybe in our heads we don't age as much but I don't know if that's quite true because I remember my grandmother saying about how old she thought she looked, but she didn't feel it. So she'd obviously felt she looked old. It wasn't like in her head she was like always looking younger than everyone else.
She thought she looked old, but she didn't feel like she was old.
Yeah, but no one does, as far as I know. I mean, they might say I feel old because you're knackered. You might.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is.
Like, my body's screwed, like I do feel old. But I think you don't feel like an old person's brain and outlook necessarily.
I think that's because what we imagine an old person's brain is like goes with a certain time. You know what I mean? Like if you're like really old now, then you could have been born in the 50s. I can't even imagine what it would be like to live in the 50s or in the late 40s or something like that, or as be a kid when we were still lighting street lamps with, candles or something, or oil or whatever. Like I couldn't. So I think maybe the mind will always seem different because there will always be differences through the generations. Does that make sense?
Well, maybe.
So when you think of yourself as old, it's like, an old mind is different because, it's different because they grew up in a world that's completely different than it is now.
Yeah, but that's just outlook though, isn't it? Is that what you mean?
Well, what makes an old brain old? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess to young people it means they're stuck in their ways and probably bigoted or something. And But then young people's brains aren't fully formed, are they? And they're too idealistic and, utopian and whatever. So, I don't know. I think this is my thing at the moment, is like people want shortcuts mentally. That's how the brain works. The brain works in stories. It doesn't work in empirical evidence. So if your brain can decide, all old people voted for Brexit and they did that because they were racist, then you don't need to think or interrogate anything else. You just go, that's that in the brain, that's the shortcut, and that makes sense in the narrative I've constructed, and blah 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 blah. Now I'm sure some old people are racist. I've heard old people say, I think old people say racist things because they can't keep up to date with whatever the terminology they're supposed to is, and they sort of don't care, and maybe they're not outwardly hateful. And
so it just comes
stuff
across like that, but maybe they don't feel it in the soul or something. I know.
But I don't doubt that there's different attitudes to certain things, but I think that's how people would typecast an old brain, so in a stereotypical they're not open-minded anymore type way. And I think that does happen because people get that's the outlook. Like if a young person might not necessarily be open-minded, but they might just believe progressive things but not consider why those things may not necessarily be, so it's kind of two sides of the same coin too. There probably is a correlation. Like I think a lot of old people just get bedded in, like I don't give a fuck anymore, and
I'm starting to feel like that.
It happens to us all. But yeah, I don't know, I'm saying that. But basically, when I remember that's my nan saying that she didn't feel she was as old as she looked. And you must feel that now. Like, how different do you feel psychologically to being a young person? I mean, invariably you would have changed, but...
Yeah, I would say I'm probably a little bit more confident because I do genuinely have more knowledge in my head. Because as you go through, like, I don't know, say between the ages like 17 and now, you learn a lot. You learn how to be an adult. You have experiences in life where you go, I should not have done that, or I trusted that person, or that was the wrong thing to do, or I thought that was dodgy, something, and you learn, whether that's like daily life things, or whether that's like how to buy a house, or whatever it looks like for you, you do learn. So I would say, like, in a way, I'm a bit more confident than maybe I was when I was younger, because I have genuinely had the experience, so I can be more confident. But have I changed in any like other kind of way? I don't know. I still feel like I'm 17.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at, you see. You still think that. I definitely think differently to how I used to, but I still don't feel like I'm not far off technically middle-aged. I don't think I feel like that.
No.
I still think I'm still hip and cool, aren't I?
No, it's good because the styles have rolled back around now. I don't know if you've seen what the kids are wearing around the unis, but it's all loose, baggy 2000s low-rise jeans. Woohoo! I fit back in again.
Yeah, it does all go full round circle. I mean, I remember people getting mullets a couple of years ago and thinking, where's this come back?
Well, the phrase in my childhood was, friends don't let friends get mullets. So I'm afraid that might be sticking around. But no offense.
It should have done. It should have stuck around. But no, it used to be a thing in the 80s. Then it got to the 90s. Everyone was like, well, that looks ridiculous. Like, why did we ever do that? And then 20 years later, it just come back.
Business in front, party in the back.
I haven't heard that. That's good. It sort of makes me think a little bit of, when you're talking about 90s trousers coming back in fashion, cycles of political thought come in and out of fashion as well. And it's kind of like the same, I don't know if it's like a cliched sort of thing now to sort of look at parallels between the modern age and the 1930s and stuff, but just like different political ideas become fashionable and then they are found to like be lacking, or they get defeated or fail or whatever. So we're talking about, communism and Nazism and fascism all sort of failing. But then like it's almost like the people that have the memory of these systems all start dying off. And so a load of new people start thinking, oh well, it just didn't get done properly last time, or it was all someone else's fault that got in the way. And so the ideas become fashionable again because the current orthodoxies are found to also be failing as well. So
yeah,
I mean, my answer to that would be there's no perfect system. The current orthodoxy is probably still preferable to Nazism or communism, but like, so you wouldn't have Americans for like a whole couple of generations being comfortable saying that they were communists. But I bet there's more now that would say that, or certainly be more sympathetic towards it. And similarly, like, a lot more right-wing parties are coming to prominence in Europe. That doesn't mean they're exactly the same thing as the Nazis, but it just means those sorts of political thoughts sort of like it swirls in a way that fashion does. Like, it just goes, you think, oh, thank God that's gone, but then it will come back. I'm not comparing the mullet to the Hitler moustache or anything, but you know. So,
no, it's a really
it's
good
interesting
point.
that you say
it
that.
Definitely will.
Basically, if you just don't change your mind on anything, you'll be fashionable in 40 years' time.
Sounds good.
And then you'll be unfashionable again. But then if you still about in another 40 years, you'll be
you'll be the cool grandma. So
yeah,
cool grandparent.
We sort of half talked about it in like the pro and anti-natalist, you know, maybe we're not so friendly towards young children and stuff anymore. But I remember sort of hearing some critique of like the modern age and maybe celebrity and stuff as being like we've fetishized maybe teenage years more so than we do the elderly. So our attitude towards the elderly in the West is quite negative when you compare it to, say, the Japanese society, where they're maybe a bit more respectful of. So maybe Japanese. Absolutely, this is like completely broad brush, kind of like probably so many individual cases will contradict this and whatnot and ever. But the sort of idea in my head would be like, if you lived in Japan, you would be revering your elders as like the wise sages of the community that have seen it all and done, and you would seek counsel from them or something. Whereas I think maybe the West sort of is maybe a bit more ageist in terms of they think, well, their time's done, and you know we need to look to what all these teenagers think about the world instead. And maybe a balance is good, because it may be something in the West that makes old people more insufferable. I don't know, but but I heard someone say it was sort of like since James Dean, we've kind of thought the teenager's kind of an invention anyway from the start of the last century. People didn't used to say teenagers before. And all those like countercultural movements where like the Teddy Boys and the hippies and all stuff, they all sort of like start in teenage years and stuff. And so we sort of romanticize that. And then I don't wonder if that's sort of part of the, you know, getting older, sort of a looks-based culture.
That's what I was going to say, if maybe it was a part of like you're aging and you feel like you're getting older, and instead of embracing that, there's a little bit of fear maybe. Yeah. Maybe even just fear of being older or even death or something strong like that. So then as a society, we look back towards what might be considered like good prime years. And that tends to be our teenage years because we're more independent, so, but then we have no responsibilities. So,
I said that to sort of like Josh a little bit, but also it probably is true. Like, you know, having a society that's influxed with images so much is also something that's like kind of gone hand in hand with this, I suppose. Yeah. I don't know how legitimate it is for me to say that because I don't know anything about how the Victorians really felt about elders and kids. I mean, they shoved more kids up chimneys, so maybe they didn't sort of fetishise children so much. But but I would imagine that the image culture has sort of contributed to that.
A part of me wonders if it has to do with our technology boom. Because if we feel like technology is the end all and be all and nothing else is important, some of the old techniques or the old ways of living are just not important anymore, or irrelevant or something like that, then perhaps we don't value the knowledge that they had or have because it's not necessary anymore. So instead of seeing them as wise, we see them as out of date.
Maybe, yeah, because
that's another
we just go to Wikipedia
angle
instead.
Whereas, like, I do know that in certain cultures, they value that. You know, like in Japan, they have, you know, incense makers that have been making incense for the last, 300 years the exact same way. You know, or maybe they've added some machinery in the last 100 years. But other than that, it's like, this methods have been the same.
So it's an industrial sort of thing as well, maybe, because...
Maybe.
Or like... Yeah. I mean, the West is... say the West. The UK is what, like 80% service industry and stuff now. So there's no like former, I don't know... I don't have like an 90-year-old barista in my family sort of telling us how to make the best flat whites.
The perfect cup of coffee.
Exactly.
But I do think that we've lost something in this, and I don't know if this is because of these things, like this idea of beauty and fear of death, and technology being the best, and other things being outdated.
And technology making you look younger as well can, because of plastic surgery, Botox just would not have been an option for anybody however many years ago, and now it's just you can. Yeah. What I was going to say, I thought I was going to bring out a better word there or phrase, but unfortunately it didn't come.
But I just feel like because of all of that, all of everything you've just said, we've basically come to the point where we've lost some very important information. I think as a society, even just simple things like, I don't know about you, but how much did you learn about like women's reproductive health in school? So like you would imagine that probably isn't covered very much, basics. And to some extent, that's fine in schools. But then you would expect the rest of it to come from someone else then. But it doesn't. It doesn't come from your grandparents. It doesn't come from your mom because they've lost it. It's all gone. The only thing you get is, yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable. Yeah, you're going to, it's going to happen. And that's it. And you just assume that all the symptoms that we've now accepted as a society, like PMS symptoms, are something that are normal. And that's actually a sign that something is wrong. And even in the medical industry, they don't tend to look at it very much because it doesn't have knock-on effects. It's not going to be cancerous or kill you. It's just going to be, you're angry once a month. So what? But it's a sign. If you're angry every single month,
you want regularly,
it now? then that's a sign that there is an imbalance, that there is something wrong. That it shouldn't be like a roller coaster. That is not right. I think we've lost that knowledge. So if we've lost that, what else have we lost? Well, what other knowledge about, I don't know, growing or harvesting or looking for natural resources or
orienteering?
We've lost loads of stuff. Orienteering.
Yeah, well, I say that because now you just use a sat nav to get everywhere and stuff. And so that's lost as an art form. Like if you're on a boat, you look for the North Star and all that crap. Not crap, obviously.
But then what do you do? What do you do after you find the North Star? Because it doesn't stay in the same place.
I don't know. Hopefully I'm not going to be in this situation. But I get my phone out. That's the answer.
Exactly. I just feel like it's such a shame.
Yeah, but it's economics, isn't it? In some respects, like, why would you need to learn that unless there was suddenly no technology? Although I don't even remember I said this before, but there was something in the 1800s. There was some solar flare thing that happened with the sun, and I remember reading that if that happened now, then all of the satellites would just get knocked out, and so we would be without everything. Presumably in that situation, wouldn't we? And just think, wow, we just live on a knife edge, don't we? Continually, I'm not just talking about
high risk
geopolitics, which is bad enough, but I mean the natural world is like a big volcanic eruption.
Well, a big part of solar astrophysics is understanding when there's storms, because it's actually really dangerous for the astronauts in space as well when the solar flares are there and stuff. For the most part, we can kind of counter that. It would knock out a lot of things, but it wouldn't necessarily, I don't think it would necessarily make us completely out. Okay. We do have a lot of infrastructure that is cabled in. It wouldn't knock out traffic lights and stuff. You know what I mean? It's not going to be Armageddon because we've had a little bit of a solar flare. But it would knock out a lot of things. And there is a whole part of NASA that is constantly monitoring the sun to warn if something actually quite large was going to happen. But the sun goes through an 11-year cycle. And then over that 11 years, it gets, busier and calmer. And then on top of that, it takes a lot of 11-year cycles to get a big one. So you're talking you're saying 1800s when's the last time we had a big one or something like that. So
I may be getting confused with dates because I might be getting confused with that Indonesian explosion in 1851 and there wasn't a summer after that for a year or something. Do you know?
That's not ringing a bell.
It's not Krakatoa, it's the one before that. I don't know the name of it, but it was the biggest one on record, and there wasn't it was just dark for a year and world temperatures plummeted and stuff. And
that sounds awful.
Yeah. But
oh man,
I mean that's will happen again at some point, I suppose, won't it?
Yeah.
Yellowstone will go off at one point, but hopefully we're not here then. So.
Oh god, yeah. I really hope that's way far into the future.
Couldn't believe that actually existed. I remember when I think the people that discovered it didn't realise what they'd found at one point. Yeah, they were just oh,
this is dangerous.
Again, we're lucky to be in this. Tiny sliver of life, I suppose, aren't we? But it's more fragile than
definitely.
Because it'll sneak up on you. I guess that's the thing with time, is that it just goes vroom, and then so that's probably why you don't feel you're that age, because it just happened quicker than you thought.
But I feel as well, when my mom had her first child, she was 21, and some people might say that was a bit young.
It's the best age to have them, isn't it? Biologically, it's the best time to have them, isn't it?
I think that is a good time to have it. Yeah. So my mom had us when she was in that kind of age range, and I remember thinking when I turned 21, oh my God, you will never, ever, ever get me having a kid right now. Like, that would just, like, we weren't financially in a place to be stable enough to even consider having a baby. Like, getting married, having a house, and getting a kid by 21, you'd have to be, like, rich by birth or a miracle, like, won the lottery or something. Like, who can do that? So I just remember thinking, like, I think that has greatly influenced how old I feel as well, because what my parents were doing at the age that I am now, I mean, obviously I've decided now anyway that I don't plan to have kids, but I did think, like, if I had been prepared, I might have had them. Maybe that's a good thing. But I wonder if that influences how you feel, though, because if you look back on your parents, you think, oh, well, when my parents were 35, they had, 3 kids and a house and a car, and they had, and they were all good to go. And I'm, like, just barely getting on with getting a mortgage. And I'm, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not proportional. I wonder if that influences how old you feel.
Yeah, it might do, I suppose. There's this whole thing about having extended adolescences these days, isn't there?
What does that mean? Like when your parents still do your laundry when you're 21?
That could be an example of it. But yeah, I think that there's some metric by which they sort of say that people don't grow up until later, and maybe people are living at home more. Maybe that's partly to do with it. And maybe maybe people are a bit more, I don't want to sound like Jordan Peterson here, but like maybe people are a bit more coddled like when they're younger now, because of all the safetyism and stuff like that, so you're not like exposed to things that make you grow as, it's a theory. University probably does it as well, I think.
Universities soften you up? Is that what you mean? They're not
No, I think they're
up?
just 3 years of extended childhood, aren't they, really?
Oh, okay.
They're not. It's just to postpone the inevitable when you have to go into the real world.
People are telling you what to do all the time when you're at uni. You have
they're
to
not
be
really.
here this time,
But it's up to you whether you go, isn't it? Because you get that autonomy as an adult.
Of
course you can fail. You can fail, but you're there for 3 years. If you want to pay them 40 grand, then you can just do what you want for 3 years, can't you?
Yeah, you can pay them 40 grand to fail. Yeah, okay.
They're not going to go, we have your money back. They'll take your money, and then you'll just either fail or get like a low grade at the end of it. You can still decide whether you want to go and how much you want to engage with the whole thing. If you want to just take drugs for 3 years, then you can do that.
I don't know. I think that education is really good, but I don't know if the process is really good, if that makes sense. I'm not saying that going to uni for 3 or 4 years and doing the uni experience is the best way to learn, but I do think that obviously as humans we should try to continuously learn
But 50 years ago you'd be down pit.
Stuff.
That's what you'd be. You had to grow up there, didn't you? You'd be fighting some 35-year-old guy trying to steal your lunch in the mine or something. So
dear.
Prefrontal cortex doesn't fully develop till you're 25 anyway, I think. And I don't know, phones have probably got something to do with it as well. They've probably ruined everything.
Yeah, phones. Oof. I mean, obviously it depends on your family. There's people that have hard childhoods.
Yeah. I'm not demeaning any sort. And I'm also not saying that it was necessarily better 50 years ago when you had to go down the mine. Obviously I'm not saying that.
I do think it's a bit of an odd one, that, because like the people who go through things that are really difficult and come out the other side sane and well are the strongest people. But those who break, it makes you wonder if maybe we should have supported them more, and then you think like, it's a funny one, because obviously you want to create strong, resilient people, like, it's a good thing, but then to be strong and resilient, you've got to go through something. It's one of the reasons why we do things like what are they called, like that
initiation ceremonies.
That really muddy challenge people do. What's that like? Is it Iron Man or something? I don't know. Like really. Yeah, because they want to challenge themselves, and they know it's going to be horrible, and they know it's not going to feel great, and they know they're going to barely make it through. And some people have different expectations of themselves than others or whatever. But, loads of people, say quote unquote normal people, do those challenges because they want the ridiculousness of it, the toughness of it. And that's why we do any of those kind of things.
Yeah, a sense of achievement.
I'm not saying you have to have a horrible life to be a certain way, but you have to put yourself through challenges, whatever that is.
Sport, like running and beat your time and all that stuff.
Exactly. Except me, I ain't running.
Yeah, I know you're not running, but yeah.
But no, you're right, exactly. That's exactly, lift a little bit more. I just mean like, in general, to help you grow up as a human, you have to go through things that make you grow.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a bad childhood, but you do have to go through things. So if we make a world that is completely safe and perfect and beautiful, how do we give ourselves those challenges that we can still grow?
That's interesting philosophical point there, isn't it?
Just throwing that out there.
And a lot of people that are in political life, like I listen to Nick Robinson's podcast, like any good centrist dad should, and just interviews people in political life, and he says that it's skewed more. People that have had bad or traumatic episodes, like have lost a parent at a young age and stuff, like are much more likely to be in politics, as well as people that are religious, that feel like they have a calling to do something for the country at large or the world or whatever, like are more minded to go into politics than, in terms of the population level, there'll be more people that have had tough childhoods, probably not poor childhoods necessarily, to go into politics, but like maybe they've lost a parent. I did hear if you lose a parent compared to if your parents separate, you are more likely to be a high achiever if you have a dead parent than if you had separated parents.
That's kind of what I mean when I was saying, like...
I'm not saying you should orchestrate a hit on your parents.
Let's not misunderstand here.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean by if you can
go through something traumatic... I'm not offering a service either, by the way, you know.
But, like, you know, there'll be people who like, they go through something that they feel has been difficult or, like you're saying, very rough. And then they have maybe their siblings. They've got more than one. One person can come out stronger from it and one person can come out messed up from it. There's no guarantee that you're going to build that strength. You can't coordinate that. You can't just... It has to be something that just happens in your life. There's this idea that apparently is hung over from the 90s, which I didn't even know it was hung over, because I think it's still on all our packaging, where women need less calories than men.
Right.
That's actually not 100% accurate, because obviously I would say I need less calories than my husband.
Is that because you're 5 foot tall?
Yes.
Rather than...
6.
Yeah.
He's a foot taller than me. He needs more food than me.
Yeah.
I would say on a calorie by calorie, you're talking like kilojoules in your body being burned to produce heat, to make your organs work, stuff like that. He will need more resting calories than I need. But because we've always said women need less calories, there's this disparity between women who don't actually they need more than 1,500 or more than whatever we say now, and things like that.
They might be 6 foot
and
tall.
Also, yeah, exactly. I mean, there's that as well. And then there is facts that, like, women need more calories when they're menstruating. So when did you decide, when did the government decide that 1,500 was what you need? Was that during menstruation or after or before, or so that there's not taking it all into account as well?
Would it now depend what time of your life you would be like? If you're post menopause, then presumably the number's going to be different still. That could also make a difference. Definitely. Sorry, I need to put that down. Yes, that could also make a difference at what time in your life you are and stuff like that. I mean, there is a little bit of thought behind the fact that not as much research in terms of old medical research has actually been done with women. Because in like the early 1900s, especially, when there was a lot of medical research happening and we got rid of all this voodoo around not cutting people open and stuff, and we were chopping people up left, right and centre to see what was going on inside, they weren't necessarily doing a lot of research into women's health. That's not to say that there's a massive disparity, but some hangovers might still be there, and perhaps the calorie thing is one of them. I also heard drugs as well, like routinely were just tested on men and then just like... So, I don't know, like a paracetamol is the same size, but is the dosage, would that affect you differently if you had different hormones or just even the size?
Exactly.
Even just the size difference, which is just like on a population level, obviously there's always anomalies with these things. There's always going to be a 6'2" woman that's like could beat me up, obviously.
And also there's metabolism makes a really big difference to how you process things. So specifically with medicines, you were saying with medicines being only tested on men and stuff, if a man has a higher metabolism, that could be processed faster than if it was given to a woman and stuff like that. So they might use that as an excuse, if you want to use that word. Maybe that's not the best word. Use that as a thought, the deciding factor, to give less medicine or less painkillers or something like that, thinking that it wouldn't, just like you would give less painkillers to a child, obviously, because the child would.
So you're saying women should use Calpol really rather than...
Actually, I'm the opposite. My metabolism quickly gets rid of painkillers from my body. So paracetamols will last less than 3 hours. And if I take codeine, my body turns that into morphine and I go a bit hallucinogenic. So I've only had that twice in my life and I say I'm allergic to it now. I just say I can't take that. But I say I'm not anaphylactic. I just get hallucinations and go a bit bonkers. And they're like, oh, right.
Sounds cool.
So I know, right? So everybody's different, obviously. And I'm probably an exception here. But like in general, there's just so many things. Like, how can we possibly add these labels, you know?
Well, like less research obviously has been done on women and stuff. Is that because like partly women not been any? There's been fewer women in power politically over the last. Because obviously not thinking about queens.
Yeah.
I'm sure Elizabeth I was a great role model and stuff, but she didn't do a lot for maternity rights, did she?
Yeah.
But then more recently, when there've been more women in politics, it tends to attract a more specific. Like I think there are more women that don't have kids, for example, in. Politics, so they're more like of the CEO class, you know, like the girl boss sort of, or like they will have a kid but they wait till they're 38 and then have IVF and have one.
Yeah,
it's a broad generalization obviously, and so full-time mothers that have 3 kids and don't work and stuff are not the sorts of people that end up in parliament. So there's even an argument in some sort of feminist circles that the women that are in the Houses of Parliament are not necessarily completely representative of the interests of all women, because they will have slightly different opinions on what's a priority for a woman. So there's like one woman MP that's sort of talking about needing to have higher birth rates and stuff, and she's sort of being singled out as being like a nutcase almost by people because it's such an unfashionable thing to be saying in Westminster among that class of MP. But I think it sounds quite a legitimate thing to be talking about, really, like especially if people want to have kids and don't feel they can.
So like giving them more incentives.
Maybe. Or just not making it so difficult for people to have them.
I don't think the government can help people hook up. I'm not sure that difficult is the problem.
Yeah, maybe not. But that's a funny thing to say, but I'm not sure that encompasses every sort of angle there. No, it's fine. I mean, I can't criticise you for that because that's basically what I spend my life doing. Just like, but, what about this hilarious example? So.
Yeah, I would say though about like you were saying about, you know, women in power representing all women or something like that, you know, basically saying they might not have kids or they might not, you know, very different type of person that might go into that.
So just to make myself immune
career.
here, this is another argument I've copied from someone else rather than necessarily exactly what I think.
I was just going to add that how is that any different than men? Because like I know men obviously can still go into power and have kids, like in terms of like they tend to work and not do the childcare as much, you know, just as a very overarching kind of numbers. But I would say that like the type of person, the personality type that's going to go into those roles is going to be night and day to some of the people that really don't want to do it. And that's not just like a fear or sort of like, oh, I would, but I sweat when I stand up in front of people. It's not that kind of thing. I mean, there will be people who genuinely would hate that idea of doing anything like that. And so you're disproportionately representing everyone by having this
Absolutely.
kind of
I completely agree with that. And that's the pitfall of representative democracy. If you can ever be bothered, which, like, right, why would you be? But Jonathan Sumption did the Reef lectures a few years ago after the referendum. Basically, he was just talking about the difference between representative parliamentary democracy and direct democracy in forms of referendum, which is taken outside of the party system. So the form of government that we have is that we're supposed to elect a representative for our area that's supposed to represent us and our interests, and so theoretically we're supposed to appoint the most qualified and knowledgeable kinds of people, or people that are going to at least dedicate their lives to that are at least going to dedicate their lives to the issues that we don't have time to, and then we trust them and their sensibilities to do that. But that is an overly romanticised idea of how it actually works, because obviously it's going to attract a certain sort of person that like wants to climb the greasy pole or whatever it is, or have these specific types of personalities. And
if it did work like that, it should be anonymous. It should be like, here are my procedures, here's what I'm going to do, here's what I believe, here's what I'm going to fight for, and you vote for what topics you like, rather than a human. As soon as you put a human element to it, you're all of a sudden going to vote for someone you like, or someone who's funny, or someone who's got charismatic personality.
Yeah, of course.
And no longer bothered about what their policies are and what they believe.
Yeah, you must have people, though, in political life or in the news or whatever, that you see and go, oh, I don't like them. And so... It's about like the brain making a shortcut. So the brain goes, I'm viscerally sort of like turned off emotionally by that person and whatever that person does.
Yeah.
And often there's grounds for it. There are occasions where someone, even if it's just for opportunistic reasons, where someone that seems quite distasteful to me will end up saying something that is true. And I'm not going to say that person is suddenly good. So for example, Trump said some things which I think are true, but I'm not talking about like Mexicans being rapists and stuff. I'm talking about how he told Angela Merkel that she shouldn't be relying on Russian gas because it was stupid.
I bet he actually said stupid as well.
He probably did, yeah. And that the Germans didn't have enough of a defence budget. Well, that's true.
Right, yeah.
I mean, that is true. Just because he said it doesn't mean I have to think, well, he's obviously got an ulterior motive. I mean, he'll just say stuff anyway, so he's probably a terrible example because he's such a toxic figure. But as the most prominent example, I just think, so people will just look at certain individuals and have that emotional sort of response. So even if they say something that they kind of think is right, you probably even think, well, they're probably saying it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
People make these mental shortcuts, and so this is why it's like all this guilt by association sort of stuff is quite successful because so many people use saying someone's right wing as shorthand for they're a bad person. If you can like attach any sort of label to someone, people will just go, oh yeah, well there you go, he was on Spectator TV or whatever, and this other person was, and therefore there must be something shady and nefarious about what they think. And it's just like, it's a shorthand for you to go, yeah, don't like them. And so humans are at fault picking the leaders that we pick. Just to quickly backtrack, and then but the representative democracy works like that, but it doesn't really work. But direct democracy is when it goes directly to the people, and then the argument against that is you probably need to have a fully informed populace before you make certain decisions.
Of such like everyone
magnitude.
Has to be at the same educational level.
Well,
or something.
Sort of, yeah, but that's why we have the other system where we do vote a supposed expert in to deal with things, because it's their job to look for every line of legislation and legal whatever on our behalf. So kind of both don't really work and have pitfalls and stuff, but it's still better than fascism and communism. So I don't know if I should go on with this, but you said about not being ready to have kids because it's like difficult when you're young and stuff, and I sort of thought it did tie into resilience, because having kids will make you more resilient. Like, you just have to do it, wouldn't you? But I don't know if I want to go on. I would just remember when I was doing in comedy, by the way, it's the only thing I have any expertise on in the world. Okay, so anything else I say, just like, don't use me as a quote machine or whatever. Comedy is anything I can really be authoritative about, and even then people would probably argue that I'd be wrong about some stuff. So when you do comedy, you start do new act nights and stuff, then you get 5 minutes, 10 minute, eventually you'll do like a 10-15 minute spot at like a professional night in the middle, and then you do a 20-minute spot in the middle, and then you do a 20-minute spot at the start of the show, and it's a different skill set and stuff, and you just like, because you're playing to a colder audience and stuff early on, and then you'll eventually go on at the end and maybe do half an hour and stuff. So it's all a progression, blah 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 blah. Then you do hours at festivals in Edinburgh and such and such and such. And I think I said to someone once that I didn't feel ready to do a certain spot. It wasn't a promoter, it was just another act. And they said, you're never ready to do something until after you've done it. I don't know, just always remember that, because I just think, well, you never know how to do something until you've done it. Of course not.
I mean, there's definitely going to be some exceptions to that. I don't want a doctor to say that. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just going to give it a try.
But you're going to be someone's first, like a brain surgeon.
Yeah.
Someone's going to be their first, proper go.
But you would hope that there'd be some sort of middle ground, at least for that. You're there as beside them monitoring,
of course.
And then one day you do it, but the other guy's still there, the senior's still there, or something like that. You would hope there's
They're not going to tell you it's some guy's first time, are they? They're not going to say that.
But you know what I mean. But I agree.
But that's still true, though, because like someone that's done 20 brain surgeries is going to be better than someone that's done one. That's not going to be as good as someone that's done 2,000 of them. So unless they're getting complacent as they get older, they're just sort of like
unless there's something. Oh, it's just another brain.
Not even looking. I remember I used to work in a hospital, and I used to always find it really like not weird really, because it made sense, but you go into like where there was surgery happening and they just have like really loud music on and stuff.
Oh my god.
I thought, well, yeah, of course they know what they're doing, but
I mean, I suppose it makes sense, but it's a bit, there's probably some research behind playing some sort of music keeping you focused and less stressed while you're, potentially got someone's
perhaps,
life in your hands.
But, so I think if you don't think you're ready to have kids, of course you're not until you've actually done it. So when you're on your fourth kid,
people have said that before.
You'd be meaning it then.
I mean, people have said that. Like, if you know you really, really want something, don't wait to have kids because you'll never be ready for them or something like that. But the only thing that I would say is don't really put pressure on yourself until you're biologically putting pressure on yourself. So as a female, there will be a point where you need to really sit down and discover if that's something you want. But overall, in terms of having kids, there is no rush.
I think that time goes very quickly, and there's got to be perhaps more of a recognition that you don't have a hugely long fertility window anyway. It's all right for me. I can still knock one out when I'm 70, do Mick Jagger it, and stuff. But
Yeah, ew.
Al Pacino and because otherwise you're saying, you've got to get to you've got to find the right person. That's difficult. And it probably gets more difficult as time goes on because people get taken up. I mean, you're not having kids by the sounds of things, which I'm not trying to persuade you to have kids or anything at all. That's not the motive. But you did meet the right person pretty young, didn't you? So
Yeah.
But, so that's a consideration. So you get to a certain age, then, and then you've got an even smaller window, and then you've got to try and meet someone, and they've also got to want the same things. And this is the other thing about having an extended adolescent and stuff. It's almost like you're sort of encouraged to not take responsibility, but to just be like, make sure you have as much possible fun and defer any responsibilities for as long as possible because you're only young once, kind of thing. But then what's your priorities in life? I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, I don't think we need more humans on the planet. So if you decide never to have kids, I don't think it's like some sort of social obligation that I
think it is. It is. The welfare state's going to collapse. So
we need to find a new welfare system.
We need more kids or robots. Artificial wombs will sort it out because then we can just pump out loads of soldiers.
I always joke that I wish I was a marsupial. I wish I had a pouch. I probably would have had a baby if I had a pouch.
I bet there's something worse about having a pouch that I think you're fetishizing marsupials.
I am fantasizing the pouch, but it sounds good to me.
I think they're all gooey in there, the pouches, aren't they?
Are they?
Yeah, I think so.
You know what? Eggs. Just eggs. That's the best thing. Then you can just lay a little egg, give it to the dad, say...
Take that into a cubicle.
Have a little sit on it, like the penguins. Your turn. 6
sit
months.
On
I'll be
That's
back
a
in a
very
bit.
euphemistic way of putting a very family-friendly way of...
Oh, dear. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed what we talked about this episode.
Whatever that was. We don't record these all at the beginning of the year to slot in.
If you have any comments, any questions, anything you want to hear us talk about, then, send them over and get in touch via socials, or you can pester Peter at the end of one of his shows and tell him you want something to talk about.
Yeah, no, why not? And obviously, you can tell other people about the show if you want. It's on all of the podcast apps and platforms, and also on YouTube. So is that everything we want to say? We're going to just leave it. That's it now, isn't it? We don't usually have to say anything else, do we? We've begged for engagement and said thanks.
Please engage with our content. Follow us, subscribe.
And we'll probably be back next month to talk about insert topic here at a later date.